Welcome to another episode of the MMA Lockcast. I'm your host, Manpreet, aka MMA Lock of the Night, and your boy on Twitter at MMALOTN. This week we're going over UFC 253, which in my opinion is a little bit top heavy, but obviously when you break down every single fucking fight on the card, every fight is intriguing to you. But yeah, I'm very, very much looking forward to it. Before we get into it, I do want to go over my last event, which was UFC Vegas 11, I believe it is, headlined by Colby Covington and Tyron Woodley. So let's just start off right there. That was my lock of the night play. I tweeted out as soon as this fight got made, I would be more than happy to bet Colby Covington all the way up to minus 350, and I give no fucks if that's square as fuck because Colby Covington was definitely winning that fight. A part of me wishes I actually did 4.75 units Colby Covington straight and then 0.25 units officially and tracked on the round 5, which I did tip to you guys. If you guys remember that, it wasn't an official play, but I did tip it and I hit that shit. Goddamn, it felt good. I don't care if it was by a rib injury. Still cash that ticket, and that's all that fucking matters. So the actual official play, 5 units at minus 324, that cashes for 1.454 units. Happy to hit that. Another hit that we had was a dog of the night play on Damon Jackson, 0.5 units at plus 319 over Mirsad Bektik. That cashes for plus 1.6 units. And again, on the best bets and props article, if you guys are a part of the Patreon, you guys will know that I picked Damon Jackson to win via submission at plus 850, and then Damon Jackson to win inside round 3, which I believe was plus 2100. Bang. That's all I got to say. Happy to hit that. A regular bet that I had 2.5 units on Journey Newson at minus 138. You know, I thought if this fight had gone past that 1 round mark, it would be easy breezy for Journey Newson. Randy Costa goes out there and absolutely flatlines him. The kid has some talent, but I still have questions about Randy Costa, and I still am looking to fade him moving forward. So minus 2.5 units there. Another dog of the night play, we had 1 unit at plus 155 on Jerome Rivera against the ever low output Tyson Nam, and I'm going to be completely honest, I still haven't seen the full fight. I was driving, and then I tuned into the fight, and all I saw was Jerome Rivera getting finished. Not sure how that first round went. So I can't say much about it. I'm a little bit bitter about it because, you know, the one thing that I was hoping didn't happen happened, but it was only minus 1 unit there, so I lost there. We did have a parlay of 2 units at plus 103 on Andre Ewell. I was hoping he was going to get the finish and not have such a close fight, but good win for him there. And then we had TJ Laramie, unfortunate loss there, got caught in the guillotine. That's it. So minus 2 units there. We had 1.5 units total on the under 1.5 on Khamzat Chimaev and Gerald Meerschaert. That one hits. That probably should have been the lock of the night play as well, too. We all know Chimaev's game. He's going to go in there and try to get that finish ASAP, and that's exactly what he did. Beautiful line as well, too. I got minus 108 at 1 unit and then minus 111 at 0.5 units. That cashes for a total of 1.38 units. Happy with that hit. 2 bets left. I swear, this was a pretty busy event for me, if you guys remember. We had the under 2.5 on Kevin Holland and Darren Stewart. I thought those guys were going to go a little bit more to war, but it is what it is. Kevin Holland comes out with a decision victory. That's minus 1 unit there. And then we had 0.75 units on Johnny Walker to win via TKO. That cashes for 0.98 units. Kind of win almost to a T as how I broke that fight down. If you guys remember, outside of Johnny Walker getting clipped silly a couple times, he still manages to stay in there and then get the finish regardless. So big power for Johnny Walker as always. That's something to keep an eye on. Overall, we end up at minus 1.01 units on the event. Very small loss. Very unfortunate loss. You know, a couple of spots in there I probably should have passed on, which is why this weekend at UFC 253, I have a much lighter card. You guys should go through the breakdowns and try to figure out which bets I actually ended up making. Regardless, the bets are free this week. You guys can go to my Twitter, go to my Bet MMA page, or even go to the website mmalotn.ca/picks, and you'll see my picks for this weekend. I only have 3 bets, but I'm very, very confident behind them, and I really, really like those spots as well. So let's quick thoughts about UFC 253. Solid card from top to bottom. Like I said, a little bit top heavy for the casuals. Adesanya against Costa. Love that fight. Reyes versus Blachowicz. Really looking forward to seeing what the new light heavyweight division is going to look like after that. Brandon Royval versus Kai Car-France, in my opinion, will probably steal the show. That fight is going to be absolute fireworks. I call Brandon Royval mini Tony Ferguson, and for good reason. If you guys haven't seen him fight before, you'll remember him after this night. Win or lose, I'm sure. Hakeem Dawodu versus Zubaira Tukhugov should be a great fight between two primarily strikers, though I believe we'll see Tukhugov go for the wrestling. Ludovit Klein versus Shane Young should be a fun fight too. Brad Riddell versus Aleksa Silva should be a great fight. And then we start off the night with Khadis Ibragimov versus Danilo Marques, which should be absolute chaos for as long as it lasts. Neither guy, in my opinion, belongs in the UFC, but it should be fun regardless. But yeah, solid card top to bottom. I'm really looking forward to it. Yeah, it's going to go down in less than fucking 24 hours. So I'm very, very excited for it, obviously. I can't wait for that to go down. All right, before we get into the breakdowns, quick reminder, if you're not a part of the Patreon already, hit up the Patreon. You guys get early access to the breakdowns, as you guys will see for the rest of the podcast. All of these were previously recorded, but as soon as I finish recording them, I post them right to the Patreon. So everybody over there gets early access to that stuff. On top of that, they get picks even when I charge the public. So it doesn't really matter this week since picks are free. But when I do charge the public, they get them a part of their $5 a month Patreon fee. And then lastly, they get a best bets and props article where I go through every single fight in a brief write-up. And I let you guys know what the best bet is for that in terms of a straight money line or over-under. And then what the best prop is for that fight as well too. A lot of people love it. That's where I give out the gems, the plus 2100s, those darts that you just want to sprinkle a little bit on for a huge return. A lot of people love that stuff. And then lastly, something that I just started up this week. If you don't want to hop on the Patreon, but you still want to get early access to the breakdowns, YouTube memberships. That's something that's been pushed on me a little bit since I hit that 1K mark. And I might as well take advantage of it. You know what I mean? $3.99 a month, you guys get every single breakdown earlier than when the podcast actually comes out. So that's something that you guys can take advantage of. You'll see the join button if you're watching this on YouTube. That is, you'll see the join button under the video here. Simply click that, and then you guys can get signed up to get these breakdowns even earlier if you're an eager beaver. So I much appreciate that. All the support you guys are giving me through Patreon, through the YouTube memberships, and even through the Tape Index is getting me closer to the goal of doing this shit full time, and I'm just over halfway there. I can't fucking wait. I can't wait to leave that 9 to 5, do this shit full time, and give you guys much more quality content and even more content. I'll try to think of other things that I can give you guys to help you sharpen your gambling game, to sharpen your MMA mind, and the more time I have to dedicate to it, the happier I'll be, the happier you guys will be, and hopefully the happier your bank accounts will be as well too. So, yeah. Again, Patreon, hit that shit up. Link in the description below, whether you're listening to it on a podcast platform or on the YouTube page. And then the YouTube membership, obviously, if you're on the YouTube page, just hit the join button there and you guys will do that. And last thing, I promise. Subscribe if you haven't subscribed yet on YouTube. Subscribe and leave a review on iTunes if you haven't done that either. Again, small things that are for free like that really fucking help your boy out. I'm telling you, it really does. All right. Enough of my blabbering. Let's get into the breakdowns, and I hope you guys enjoy them. Khadis Ibragimov versus Danilo Marques. We got minus 155 on Ibragimov and plus 135 on the UFC newcomer Danilo Marques. We got the over-under at 2.5 with under being minus 135, and that's kind of the line that I'm most intrigued by in this fight. So let's start off with Khadis Ibragimov. We already know he's coming off a 3-fight losing streak. Hasn't won a fight in the UFC. Got finished in 2 of them. But coming into the UFC, he amassed pretty much finishes in all of his fights. He's going out there like a berserker and just getting guys out of there quickly. But weirdly, he has one of his wins coming via rope grabbing at M1 Challenge 92. I believe that was just one of his opponents just continuously grabbing the rope without even, with, I guess, plenty of warnings. But what we've seen in his UFC run is he comes out like a bat out of hell in that first round and, tries to get his opponents out of there. And he does carry that heat throughout the fight, just not obviously as consistently as he does in the first round. Roman Dolids was a tough matchup just because of how hard that guy hits, and slightly a little bit more technical and a little bit more weapons, I'd say, than Khadis. But in this fight, this is a fight that he finally should get a victory in. And it's funny because he opened up as like a minus 250 favorite, and then he's been bet all the way down to minus 155. Sorry, he opened at minus 180, got up to minus 195, and then bet all the way down to minus 155. But I think that was people just kind of blind fading Khadis there. And then once they start to do the actual tape on Danilo, they're like, oh shit, we got to get the fuck out of here. Maybe buy some money back on a Khadis. But it's crazy. I think neither of these guys really deserve to be in the UFC, but I don't really feel comfortable betting either side here. One thing I do feel comfortable betting on is the under. I feel like both guys have that knack to be able to get the finish, and I think it's actually going to be Ibragimov this time around. I feel like Danilo is just a little bit too much of a fraud. The only thing he really has going for him is the fact that he's a Demian Maia black belt, which unfortunately, based off the tape that we've seen, isn't the most credential thing or thing that you should be proud of. It's kind of besmirching Demian Maia's name, if anything. You know what I mean? Demian Maia, we know, is like a wizard when it comes to the jiu-jitsu game, but what we've seen from Danilo is kind of, mix that in with his poor gas tank. I think it's a little bit of a spit in the face of my man Demian Maia. But you guys will recognize Danilo from being in Shogun's corner the last couple fights. It seems like he's been a solid training partner of theirs, and then obviously giving them corner advice. But mainly in there seemingly for his jiu-jitsu, because if you take a look at this guy's stand-up, there is none. You know what I mean? He probably will have a better time trying to make people laugh doing stand-up than he does actually being effective with his striking. He looks very uncomfortable. I told somebody already that it looks like Roxanne Modafferi is way more comfortable on the feet than he is. He just doesn't seem... He has his winning shots just as any striker has, but that's really about it. The guy's tall, the guy has a frame, but he just doesn't know how to use it. I'll give him this. He has some solid front kicks. We did see that on display against Myron Dennis. Decent kicks, but again, it just doesn't feel like that's really where he wants to be. He wants to drag fights to the ground, but I feel like this is just going to be a little bit too much of a step up for him. And considering that it's, a guy like Khadis Ibragimov, that just tells you the level of competition that Danilo has been fighting on the regional scene. He did step in on short notice to fight Myron Dennis and lost via split decision in a fight where, you could possibly give him the first 2 rounds for, getting the fight on the ground and just pretty much controlling Myron from on top. But his jiu-jitsu seemed quite poor, and it didn't even seem like... it seemed like if it was Khadis on the bottom, Khadis probably would have gotten up with a little bit more ease. I feel like he'll have... I think Khadis will have an easier time of keeping this fight on the feet. I think his takedown defense, it isn't the greatest, but I think it's going to be good enough to kind of nullify anything that Danilo has throwing towards him. But I feel like it's going to come down to that first round knockout from Ibragimov. I don't think that Danilo will be able to withstand it. He just fades in those situations. I'm surprised that Myron Dennis wasn't able to get a finish over him. It just seemed like he was pitter-pattering him the whole time. There's really no sting behind any of those shots that Dennis was throwing, so that kind of gives me pause. But Khadis, we know he throws everything in the kitchen sink behind his shot, so I'd be surprised if Danilo is able to withstand that barrage. Let's just take his last 2 fights, which were in 2017 and 2018. So we're approaching over 2.5 months or 2.5 years since Danilo has actually seen live pro MMA competition. But his last win was over a guy that was 5-4-1. And the win before that, get this, hold on to your seat. 0-16. He pushed that guy to 0-17. Let's see what that guy's doing now in terms of his record. 0-21. The guy has not won a fight at all, ever. Clayton Catino is the guy that Danilo beat last, and he hasn't competed since he lost to Danilo. But yeah, very, very sketchy record of his past opponents. Even the guy Junior Lorenzo, that was a fight where I felt like Danilo should have been able to get the submission a lot quicker. He did actually have, it seemed like the angle was a little bit off in terms of the view that we were getting, but it seemed like he had Junior in a pretty tight rear naked choke right at the end of that first round. But unfortunately, time ran out, and then it took another 4.5 minutes for Danilo to find that position once again and finally get the tap out. But yeah, I like the under 2.5 here. Whether it's in the first round or the second round, I think it's going to be Khadis just putting together a barrage of punches, and Danilo's not going to be able to withstand them. Yeah, I like Khadis to win here. Not the most confident in betting him, though, but I do like the under 2.5, which is where I think he gets the job done anyway. And we get a slightly better price at the minus 135 range. So I do like Khadis to get this fight done in the first round. And in the first round, his odds are actually plus 350. So that's not too bad. For him to even win by TKO is plus 205. That's not too bad either. And then if anything, you want to hedge with Marques. Marques via submission is plus 445. So that's not too bad either. But I'm going to take first round KO for Khadis Ibragimov. Juan Espino versus Jeff Hughes. We got minus 300 on Espino, former TUF winner, and plus 250 on Jeff Hughes. The over is set at 1.5. With the over being minus 150, and that's kind of the spot that I like most here. So let's start off with Juan Espino, I should say. First time in the cage since November of 2018, so we're approaching 2 years since the last time we saw him in the cage. Myriad of injuries, and the guy is 39 years old at this point in time, so you got to assume that his body, is slowly starting to catch up with him, and his age is catching up with him. Luckily for him, I tweeted it out earlier today that, being in the heavyweight division, it's not too bad to be 39 years old. Let's not forget, Stipe is 38. You know what I mean? A lot of the champions and a lot of guys, that have been fighting at the highest levels at the heavyweight division have been much older in age. So I do think we can still get a solid 3 or 4 years out of Juan Espino, especially given his style of fighting. When you have a grapple heavy fighter, it's not often that he takes too many hard shots, especially when his opponent has his back on the ground. I love his dominant style of wrestling. Like, it's just, he goes in there, gets the job done, whether it's a submission or even just riding out a decision. But more often than not, it is a submission and a quick finish too. My concern here is with Jeff Hughes. He seems like a resilient and tough dude. He hasn't really caught his stride since coming over to the UFC. He's pretty much gone 0-2-1 in the UFC with that no contest coming against Todd Duffy with that accidental eye gouge. I don't know about you guys, but Todd Duffy quit in that fight, in my opinion. So, in the Rafael Pessoa fight, we just saw Pessoa a little bit more mobile on his feet. Hughes was not able to, get his rhythm or get his timing, and he got caught with a lot of hard shots. So he lost a decision there. And then in the Maurice Green fight, he just did not put the pedal to the metal and just, was a little bit too passive in that fight. It was a split decision loss. It was a close fight, but there were a lot of concerns in that fight for Jeff Hughes, and a lot of people are kind of chalking it up to, just UFC jitters. It's tough for me to believe that, especially when he's going in there and fighting a guy that he had already fought for 25 minutes, 2 fights before that. You know what I mean? Maurice Green, not the most technical guy, not the most talented guy, and you've already beaten him over 25 minutes, yet you can't go out there and beat him over 15. That was very sketchy. I had a pretty hefty bet on Jeff Hughes there too, so that one really, really let me down. But in this fight against Espino, it's interesting because, I've dug through the tape that's available on Jeff Hughes, and we don't really see much in terms of what he has to offer off of his back. So I'm not sure if he can go out there and really, fend submissions. It's without a doubt, I truly believe that he's going to get taken down. I don't think there's a lot of people that are going to be able to stop the shots of Juan Espino. Just the way the guy's built, how strong he is too. He's just ragdolling dudes. And I don't think that's much of an issue for him here against Jeff Hughes, who, I think he was 250 in his last fight against Rafael Pessoa. Yeah, he weighed in at 254. You know, I mean, he's throwing around guys like Maurice Green, and Espino just has ridiculous power and strength. So I don't think he'll have much issue getting Jeff Hughes down. And Jeff Hughes isn't really a power puncher either. The guy's like an accumulative damage, try to prolong his gas tank as much as possible. I'm not sure if his game plan is to try to like put everything into a shot so that Juan Espino is not able to close the distance, or try to conserve enough, try to survive off of his back, kind of accepting that he's going to get taken down, and then try to beat Espino late, because we haven't really seen Espino late. The decision that he had on the Ultimate Fighter, you guys got to remember that was only 2 rounds against Ben Sassoli. He grinded him out for 2 rounds. If that went to a 3rd round, we don't know what we would have seen, but let's be honest, we probably would have seen him grind out Ben Sassoli for another 5 rounds. What he would have done to Jeff Hughes, though, who seems to have a better gas tank, who knows? So what I do actually like in this is the over 1.5. But what's keeping me back from really unloading on this play is the lack of knowledge that we really have on Jeff Hughes' submission defense. A part of me, I believe that he would be, as good as Ben Sassoli off of his back, to be able to, not give up his back, or not give up a triangle choke, or arm triangle choke, I should say. I feel like it would just be like a slow beating by Juan Espino. So there's a couple plays that you can go for here. There's Juan Espino inside the distance, if you believe that he's going to get the finish or the choke. And I believe that is at Espino inside the distance is -115. So there's that, or Espino by decision plus 280, or the over 1.5, which is -150. I wanted to go into this and really bet Espino, but -300 is a little bit too much for a guy that has had close to a 2-year layoff. If money starts to come back in on Jeff Hughes and we get Juan Espino closer to that -200 or -230 range, I'd probably be a little bit more, gun happy in terms of trying to pull the trigger on Juan Espino here. But I think the play is probably the over 1.5. I could see it dragging on. But again, there is just the mysteriousness and the unknown of what Jeff Hughes really has to offer off of his back. Given his experience, given his durability, given his toughness. I almost pulled up Mike Tyson there. But given his toughness, I feel like he would survive. But again, submission doesn't really take toughness into consideration. Like, toughness, in my opinion, and durability comes to, being able to take a shot and being able to take damage. But, a choke is just like, okay, you're going to go night-night if Espino locks up a triangle choke or anything. So I think it's going to be very important for Hughes to go out there, make sure he doesn't give it up in arm triangle, because I feel like that's Espino's best submission that he can throw out there. But yeah, I like the over 1.5 here. I am going to go with Espino, hoping that some more money comes in on Jeff Hughes. I highly doubt it, considering that he's pretty much 0-3 in the UFC. Well, 0-2-1. But yeah, I like Espino. I'm going to say 2nd round submission. I think he wears on Hughes and then eventually gets to finish late in the 2nd round. But I do like the over 1.5. Will I play it? Not 100% sure yet. We'll see what the rest of the card has to offer, and then when I get back around to this fight, we'll see if I have some, units or money left over that I'd be willing to chip to see if this over 1.5 is worth it. So once again, Juan Espino via 2nd round submission. Aleksa Camur versus William Knight. We got -165 on Camur and +145 on Knight. The over-under is at 1.5, with the over going at -125. And Camur did open up as the -195 favorite, and it has come down to -165. I'm seeing a lot of love out there for William Knight. A lot of people seem to be high on him, and I don't really understand it, to be honest. So let's start off with him. He only has 1 loss to Tefon and Zuchikwi. If you guys remember, Tefon was actually on the Contender Series a couple weeks ago where he got a 2nd round finish. So William Knight, not the biggest light heavyweight out there, very dense and very thick. He's standing at 5'10", whereas Camur is 6'1" with a 75-inch reach, 73-inch reach for William Knight. Both guys are kind of green still. You know what I mean? Like, they have a combined, 15 fights. They don't really have too many quality wins on their record. The Jamel Jones fight for William Knight, well, was very weird. He pretty much got handled that entire fight by, albeit a much bigger fighter who took the fight on short notice. But he seemed to, he was just surviving on the bottom. That's all it was. I think anybody with a better top game would probably be able to finish William Knight there. But, Knight rode it out. And he was able to, eventually reverse position when Jamal Jones pretty much ran out of gas. And then he tapped. Jones tapped his strikes. He just gave up. You know what I mean? And then the Tefon fight, I'll give William Knight the benefit of the doubt there. He looked like he was in the fight. And it was weird because he got hit by a spinning back elbow, then he got hit by another elbow, and then he tried taking Tefon down. But as he was trying to take him down, Tefon did a good job of pretty much stopping the takedown, but like kind of face planting William. And it looked bad from the referee's angle. And as soon as he stopped it, we saw William kind of like protest a little bit, and it made sense. He wasn't completely out, but the positioning and the series of events leading up to that seemed quite questionable. So I'm not really, ragging on the referee for stopping the fight there. And then we saw him against Rocky Edwards, who's kind of like a vet, an old guy. Rocky Edwards is not a guy that's trying to make it to the UFC at this point, kind of just a guy, doing this part-time. And it took him to the third round to actually, go out there and finish Rocky Edwards. And a lot of people are going to go out there and be like, yo, look, William Knight has a solid gas tank. He's still able to go out there and finish guys in the third round. I'm not a full believer of that. If you guys watch that Rocky Edwards fight, man, that whole second round, like the entire second half of that second round was just Rocky Edwards on the back of William Knight, just not able to get his arm out of like a clinch position that William Knight had it in, and William was just chilling there, like he's just laying on his tummy. The referee's not standing them up, even though that there's no activity going on, and he got. He got lucky. He got to rest there. And then even in that third round, like they were just dilly-dallying with each other until it landed a beautiful 1-2 to rock Rocky Edwards and then get the finish there. And then the Cody Brundage fight, easily taken down. And I'm not saying that it's too easy to get William down, but Cody Brundage is a solid wrestler. So it was nice to see him get that quick takedown. But, you got to give Herb Dean a little bit of shit there. He's got Cody. Cody's clearly on Williams' back, like has a solid position there. But just like the Rocky Edwards fight, William does a good job of he has some crazy grip strength because he's just holding on to Cody Brundage. He has no get up technique whatsoever. He's just waiting. He's biding his time, and he's hoping that a referee like Herb Dean is going to kind of provoke them to be like, all right, you got to move or you got to get up or I'm going to stand you up. You know what I mean? And that kind of provokes Cody Brundage to kind of go to his back. And that allows William Knight to get back to his feet. And then Cody Brundage goes in on another takedown and then just suffers the Travis Brown style elbows and gets to finish that way. So there's still a lot of holes in William Knight's game. He's not the most active fighter either. So that's where I think Aleksa could probably be able to shift this fight in his favor. The line that I do like here is the over 1.5, because I do feel like we'll see these guys kind of try to feel each other out. I don't think we're going to see Camur go out there and try to take William Knight's head off, because that would put him into too much danger and trading inside the pocket. He's going to want to keep his range. He's going to want to be able to stay on the outside and kind of chop away at William Knight, try to make him work, you know what I mean? Because I feel like Knight's gas tank could be suspect if he's able to actually work. But then again, Camur's gas tank seemed a little bit suspect in that just on the dead fight as well, even though he was able to pull off a takedown in that last 30 seconds. But this fight is just a pass for me. All in all, it's a pass. There's too many unknowns for either guy. They're still very green in their games. You got to give the slight advantage to Camur from being from a better training camp with training with Strong Style and Stipe and those guys. But yeah, I feel like he would be the slightly more active fighter too. William Knight shows some solid leg kicks, but just doesn't throw them enough. He has a size advantage that he's going to have to overcome, especially against a lot of these light heavyweights. If he sticks around at 205, the guy is so dense and jacked that it's just going to be interesting to see how he matches up with guys that are a little bit more seasoned than Aleksa Camur. With that said, I'm going to go with Camur here. I think that he might be able to chip away from William Knight from the outside. it is a little bit concerning because when he does trade or start to throw a couple of the strikes, he does leave himself a little bit more vulnerable, which is where I think that William Knight could land a bomb or something like that. I truly understand the whole dog or pass situation in this fight. So if you are looking to bet this fight, William Knight is probably the way to go. But again, I just don't like a guy with just strictly his skill set. The guy shows no technical abilities other than like some solid strikes. But like on the ground, he's holding on and hoping that the referee stands them up. He has no technique on the ground or anything like that. Just sheer power, sheer strength. So yeah, it's gonna be interesting to see what Camur's game plan is here. I think if he's smart, he plays it out on the feet a little bit and then starts to mix in some takedowns and start to get William Knight to work. But then again, we got to see what Camur's gas tank is like as well. So yeah, this fight is a complete pass for me. If anything, I would look at the over 1.5 at -125. I think that's fairly lined. And considering I believe both of these guys are going to go out there and try to feel each other out. Yeah, we could see this go longer than 7.5 minutes. So I'll go with Camur to win this by decision. But the over 1.5 is probably the best spot. And again, I'm just passing on it. There's no need to invest any money into this fight. Shane Young versus Ludovit Klein. We got -115 for Klein and -105 for Shane Young, with the over-under at 2.5, under 2.5 being -115. And there's been a lot of love coming in on Ludovit Klein. Opened up as a +125 dog, got bet down a little bit, and now here he is pretty much at a pick 'em, and the line is starting to flip, and we're getting a little bit more love on Klein. And after running the tape, I can't say I disagree. So let's start off with Shane Young first, actually. So he's 2-1 in the UFC. His UFC debut was to Alexander Volkanovski. Obviously comes up on the short end there. And then he fights two guys in Rolando D and Austin Arnett who allow him to kind of really play out his game to the best of his ability. Shane Young does very well when he's the one on his front foot. Though, if his opponent allows him to dictate the pace and set the pace, Shane Young is going to have a pretty successful and a solid outcome to that fight. Obviously in the Volkanovski fight, he was not able to do that, and obviously he came out on the short end. But that's fucking Alexander Volkanovski, and he does that pretty much to all of his opponents. With Ludovit Klein here, though, I think he's going to run into a little bit of trouble. I think that Klein might be the slightly slicker striker here, and also throws a little bit of output too. So I truly think it's going to be whoever comes out on the front foot is going to be the one that's successful in this fight. And I can see them going back and forth, but I got to give the slight edge to Klein. Like, I feel like he has a little bit more output, the cleaner striker of the two, heavier hitter as well. And he's fought some decent talent on that scene, so I don't think it's too bad of experience that he's managed to accrue. He's 16-2. He has a solid record under his name, but he's fought some decent records. Just his last three opponents alone: 13-1, 39-16 against Joao Paulo Rodriguez. That was a fight where, Rodriguez, 39 years old, a little bit older, but it's good to get in there and go up against a guy that has as much experience as him, and he did end up finishing him in that third round. And then Lucas Sajewski, that was a beautiful head kick and punches finishes there in the first round, but he's fought some solid competition, and he has stayed active compared to Shane Young, who's been out of action for a little, he hasn't been as active over his last three fights as Ludovit Klein is. So let's just take this into consideration. Shane Young, his fight against Alexander Volkanovski, which was his third last fight, that was in November of 2017. November of 2017, my man Ludovit Klein was just coming off a loss to Aiden Lee, and then after that was able to put together 7 victories in the amount of time it took Shane Young to get two more fights under his belt. So he stayed active. He wants to get into the UFC. He wants to get into the big show, whether it was the UFC or even KSW, if that's something that he wanted to do over on that side of the world. But here he is in the UFC, short notice against Shane Young too. Somewhat short notice, as Shane Young was actually supposed to fight Nate the Train Landwehr. I was really, really looking forward to that fight. But yeah, this should be a little bit more of a fun fight. I think the skill level is relatively the same, but I got to give the slight edge to Klein here. You guys know how I feel about betting on UFC debuts, and last week I kind of broke that mold and went with Jerome Rivera and TJ Laramie, and both of those didn't really come out on the winning end, so that was a little bit concerning. Personally, I think I'll pass on this fight, but I do give the slight advantage to Klein. So I think the money coming in on him was, pretty much justified. I completely understand it. I've seen some possible hate for Klein's cardio and thinking that Shane Young is going to go out there and just, demolish him in the second or third round. I don't think that's going to happen. I think it truly comes with the confidence of Shane Young. If he's able to establish his game in that first round, then it's going to allow his confidence to grow in the second and third. But again, Ludovit Klein is not Austin Arnett or Rolando D. I think Klein has a little bit more aggressiveness to him. I don't think he'll accept being on the back foot. And even if he is on his back foot, I think he'll be throwing a little bit more compared to what Arnett and D were throwing. So, Shane Young has a tough test ahead of him here, and I do like Klein. So I'm gonna go with Klein to win this fight, probably by, he can win this by decision or late finish. Damn. You know what? I'll take Klein to win by second round KO. The under 2.5 is very intriguing here. Again, considering that both guys are primarily strikers, and I love those spots whenever these guys are just strikers, and we know this fight is mainly going to stay on the feet, especially when they have some knockout power behind them too. So I do like Klein to win this fight. I'm going to say by second round finish, but the under 2.5 is probably the most intriguing spot in this fight. Jake Matthews versus Diego Sanchez. We got minus 750 on Jake and plus 525 on the Nightmare. I don't really know what to say about this fight. It's pretty straightforward. Jake Matthews is a guy that goes out there and pretty much grinds out all of his opponents, as we've seen in his last couple fights. And it's what's mystifying to me is the fact that he's been in the UFC since 2014. He came into the UFC when he was just 20 years old, and he's accrued solid amount of experience. His only losses to James Vick, Kevin Lee, Andrew Holbrook in a split decision, and then Anthony Rocco Martin about 3 fights ago. But he goes in there and he's able to grind out his opponents, which is why he's always able to get the victory. Well, not always, but in most of his fights. It's been a while. Well, he did choke out Shinsho Anzai back in June of 2018. But even before that, you had to go back to 2016 March, where he choked out Johnny Case. But he has slowly become a little bit of a decision machine in the UFC. One thing that we can always kind of bank on with Diego Sanchez is his durability, and it's been a while since we've actually seen him legit finished. What's the last time we saw him finished? Matt Brown via an elbow. That was disgusting. November of 2017. So it's been a while since we've seen him finish. And Jake Matthews, I find it hard to believe that he's going to go out there and really put on a crazy type of pressure or, really go balls to the wall with ground and pound when he has Sanchez down, because let's be real. He's going to be going for the takedown here, trying to get this fight to the ground. And you know what? I wouldn't be surprised actually to see him strike a little bit just to test the chin of Diego Sanchez. We really don't know what to expect with Diego now. He did have that Fabio guy in his corner last time around. He will have Stephan Bonner this time around, so I'm not sure how much that's really going to change anything, but I just feel like his body is diminishing. His durability will kind of always be there. His cardio will always kind of be there, but his skill set is pretty much on the decline. He's 38 years old. Been in the UFC for God knows how long now. And yeah, he's just a wild card at this point. But one thing you can always bank on is the fact that, not always, but he'll probably come out on the losing end. With that said, minus 750 is still a little bit crazy. I feel like for the amount of value that it adds to a parlay, it's not even worth it. You know what I mean? I don't think it's worth it, especially considering what happened last time around where, we had that freak thing with that illegal knee by Michel Pereira, and we end up getting a Diego Sanchez victory off of that. It's tough. Like I I'm still trying to figure out whether the plus 250 on Jake Matthews via TKO is worth it, or just go with the decision, which I believe is at minus 110. That's probably the best route to go here. Yeah, I don't know. Mix them with the fact that we just had Conor McGregor call out Diego Sanchez, and Diego kind of, accepting it almost. He even tweeted something out saying, hashtag this is me now. And then he had this whole like post about Conor McGregor and saying that he's going to go out there and, destroy Jake Matthews. And I just find that hard to believe. If anything, that might set him up for failure. If he goes out there and overextends himself, we could see Jake Matthews take advantage of that, get the takedown, maybe even open up a couple of submission opportunities for Jake Matthews as well. But I just don't know if the body of Diego Sanchez can keep up with his mind. And I think that's where it's really going to come down to it for Diego Sanchez. So I will take Jake Matthews to win this fight. You know what? I'm going to go on a whim here and just say Jake Matthews via finish. Probably second round, maybe third round. But yeah, I just think he's just too young, too athletic. Diego Sanchez isn't this crazy power puncher that's going to go out there and rock or knock out Jake Matthews. And I think that, Jake Matthews, his speed and his youth will be able to keep him in this fight in the grappling realm. And I find it hard to believe that Diego Sanchez will be able to go out there and snatch 2 rounds of grappling over Jake Matthews here. So I'll go with Jake Matthews, probably second or third round finish. I'll say TKO, just consecutive blows, after holding Diego Sanchez down in a compromising position. So not the craziest of breakdowns here. It's just so hard to know what the fuck you're going to get with Diego Sanchez, and mixing the fact that the odds are so out of whack. I'm not going to go out there and be like, all right, Diego Sanchez is worth a bit of a stab here, nor am I going to say that Jake Matthews is worth the being a parlay piece here either. So Jake Matthews via second round TKO. Brad Riddell versus Alex De Silva. We got plus 280 on Alex De Silva and minus 340 on Quake Brad Riddell. The over-under is at 2.5 with the under being minus 120. Let's start off with Brad Quake Riddell. City kickboxing guy, obviously claim to fame, just, being in the corner, not in the corner, but, always being in the same training camp as Israel Adesanya. Pretty much all those guys, once Adesanya started to blow up, Kai Car-France, resurfaced in the UFC. Shane Young jumped over to the city kickboxing guys after he lost to Alexander Volkanovski. And then Brad Riddell was another one of their guys that was on the come up, that got the call to the UFC after beating a guy that was 5-8. I'll let that one simmer for a little bit. But he, other records on his record: 8-4-1 before that, 1-2 before that. Lost to a guy that was 11-5, and then beat a guy, beat Kenan Song. That's probably his claim to fame here, or at least the best pre-UFC fight that he has on his record. But even again, Kenan Song is not anything super special or anything like that. But yeah, in the UFC, 2-0 now, split decision victory over Magomed Mustafayev last time around. If you guys remember, that was that weird first round where Riddell pretty much rocked him right off the bat, and then we got like 4 minutes or 3.5 minutes of Magomed Mustafayev pretty much controlling him on the ground and landing some solid shots, or even the clinch control against the cage. Pretty much saying that Mustafayev stole that round even after getting dropped in that first minute. That's what I thought. A lot of other people thought the same way. I remember we did the deciding splits episode for that as well too, and I believe Tony gave round 1 to Brad Riddell strictly off the knockdown alone, but I thought the control and damage that Mustafayev was able to accumulate over those 3.5 minutes was more than enough to actually give him that round. But either way, well, that's a different fight. What's mystifying to me here is the fact that Brad Riddell is such a heavy favorite and continues to grow wider and wider. I'm expecting closer to fight time or even event time, that line might even get a little bit wider, considering most people are going to go out there and parlay Brad Riddell, just thinking, all right, this guy minus 320, what's the harm in throwing him into a parlay, because he adds a little bit of value to it and he should go out there and win. I'd say hit the pause button a little bit. I'd say let's back up a little bit. That line's a little bit too wide. Like, he's not going out there and absolutely decimating his opponents. He's minus 320 at 8-1. You know what I mean? Solid Muay Thai and kickboxing background, but again, he's not anything amazing. You know what I mean? He has had a loss on his record in the past. He's not this undefeated monster. You know, the Jamie Malarkey fight, you know, Malarkey had some success in that, and he did land some takedowns, and that seems to be what Alex de Silva's path to victory is in his most recent fights, is to try to go out there and grind out his opponents. The kid's 21-2. He's had plenty of experience, and he's still young, and he's still getting better as the time goes on. So to go out there and fade Brad Riddell with a young up-and-coming kid, 24 years old, with, you know, over 23 fights on his record, it's not that bad of an idea, especially if we're going to get close to plus 300 at this point. I'm going to wait a little bit and see if we actually get that plus 300 mark, because that would be great. You know, obviously plus 289 and plus 285 is not that bad either, but I'm just being a little bit too greedy at this point in time. But I do think that we will see plus 300 on Alex de Silva come tomorrow morning, event day. So it's worth waiting it out. But, this fight should play out much closer than the minus 320 kind of shows here. Riddell, obviously, I believe he is talented, but I feel like we're just riding the wave a little bit too early here, especially considering that he's a city kickboxing guy. Shane Young and Kai Kara-France are also guys that are getting that city kickboxing rub, and a lot of people are, throwing money on them just, I think, strictly due to that affiliation. Maybe not strictly, but in part due to that affiliation. Obviously, we have seen a little bit of money come in on Ludovit Klein against Shane Young, but I do believe that Shane Young is probably on the lower end of the guys that are over at City Kickboxing. I do believe that Brad Riddell is talented. I think his striking is great too. And, that fight that he had before coming to the UFC, it seemed like he was just trying to try out his grappling chops, where he just went out there and just grapple fucked his opponent for 5 rounds. But it wasn't anything amazing or anything crazy good. I will say, when he was put up against grappling in the UFC, he did show a good job in terms of getting back to his feet. But I feel like Alex de Silva has a little bit more to offer in the top positions and in the jiu-jitsu realm too. He does have a good amount. Well, he has 4 submissions listed on his Tapology page, 7 in total if you want to count them all. But I think there's a solid path to victory here for De Silva to keep this fight close, to grind it out. If he can handle his way on the feet, which I think he should be able to, this fight will play out a lot closer than the line actually indicates. So, I think this fight plays out much closer. I'd be happy taking a small shot at De Silva here. I think the kid's talented, and I think he's gonna, he's gonna upset some people, I think. So, mix in the solid striking that he has, as well as his knack to get fights to the ground and do a decent job there in terms of controlling guys. I think Riddell will have some success in terms of getting back up, but I don't want to advocate playing a guy that's at minus 320, or even parlaying him for that fact, if I don't think that his skill set is that much better than Alex de Silva. So I do like de Silva here. I will take him to win by decision. And you can crap over this pick all you want, but once you see that fight play out and see how close it actually is, even if de Silva comes out on the losing end, this is not a good spot for Riddell to be a minus 320 favorite. I'm going to go with de Silva to win this fight via decision. Hakeem Dawodu versus Zubaira Tukhugov. We got minus 137 on Tukhugov and plus 127 or plus 125 on mean Hakeem Dawodu. So we did see a little bit of money come in on Zubaira this morning after he clearly was 4 pounds over the weight limit. And it was probably the most happiest guy that you've ever seen miss weight. A lot of people were pretty much put off by him flexing on the scale and, not really making it seem like he gave a fuck that he missed weight. I guess it's a bit of an advantage for him here. So he is mainly, like, a lot of people see him as a striker, but he does have a wrestling background as well, where he's able to get guys to the ground and try to do some damage from there. But I feel like we'll see him go out there and try to strike for a little bit in that first round. The one thing that we've seen with Zubaira is his lack of gas tank. You know what I mean, we have seen him go 3 rounds in the past, but one thing that's always pretty evident, at least in his third rounds, is that his output like pretty much wanes a lot. So I think that's where we'll see Hakeem have a lot of success, especially in that third round. I feel like the pace and the striking output of Hakeem Dawodu is going to make it a little bit more difficult for Zubaira to really get his shots off, and then we'll see him really start to implement the grappling. Hakeem did deal with the grappling onslaught from Kyle Bochniak a couple fights ago, and he was able to stuff the majority of those takedowns. But I feel like Zubaira is probably one of the stronger wrestlers that he's fought in the last couple fights. We did see Julio Arce get him down in that second round, his last time out, and then in the third round we saw him, stuff a couple of the takedowns and really get the better of the striking exchanges. So I think it's really going to come down to at least Hakeem securing one of those first 2 rounds, and then I believe that third round is pretty much a nail in the coffin in terms of making sure he gets that third round. It's all about those first 2 rounds. As long as he's able to shuck off enough takedowns, or even if he gets taken down, just get right back to his feet, he should be in the clear in terms of being able to outstrike Zubaira, who, in my opinion, again, is kind of low output, doesn't really throw in too many combinations or anything like that, but does throw a lot of power behind his punches. It was pretty much a pick 'em leading up to today, and then we finally got some money coming in on Tukhugov, but I still feel like Dawodu is the right side here. I feel like just overall, he's a much better striker, the much better Muay Thai practitioner, and the better gas tank. Mix that in with a little bit of a better pace and more output. I feel like Dawodu is the right side. The one key that I'm really looking at here is Dawodu inside in the round 3. We did see him get a third round finish 2 fights ago against Hori, and I feel like, again, against a guy like Tukhugov here, who tends to slow down a little bit, and his he tries to bounce around and look like he's fine, and tries to explode every now and then, but it's just not. It's too far and few between, in my opinion, in those third rounds, and that's where we'll see Dawodu really start to pick it up and have success against Tukhugov. So plus 1800 is what I'm seeing right now for Dawodu inside round 3. That might be something that I take a little bit of a degenerate shot on, and I definitely like that. So I do like Dawodu to win this fight. Again, the overall better stand-up artist here. I'm hoping that he's worked on his get-ups a little bit. His takedown defense has looked decent in the past, but again, this is probably the stiffest test that Dawodu has faced when it comes to the grappling and wrestling realm. So as long as he's able to keep it on the feet, I feel like this fight is his prime for the taking, and at slight underdog odds, I think he's more than worth a solid stab here. So I do like Dawodu. I'm going to take him to win by third round TKO, and I wouldn't mind a little bit of a sprinkle on Dawodu at plus 1800 in the third round. By the way, I find it interesting that Tukhugov is plus 1350 in round 3. And it seemed like there was money coming in on that, which is why. So you opened up plus 1525. Now it's down to plus 1350. I feel like Dawodu, if anything, is a little bit more live in that round 3. So I am going to take Dawodu to win this fight via third round TKO. Ketlen Vieira versus Sijara Eubanks. We got minus 185 on Vieira and plus 160 on Sijara Eubanks. Let's start off with Sijara. She spoiled my lock of the night play last time around, but even if it wasn't her, it was going to be Roxanne Modafferi who took out Andrea Lee. But Sijara goes out there and has a pretty solid performance against highly touted Julia Vieira, and it came down to a couple things. So all 3 judges had a 29-27 for Eubanks, meaning that all the judges gave the first round to Julia Vieira. Kind of makes a little bit of sense. You could make a slight argument for Eubanks winning that round, but the second round, huge 10-8 round for her. Julia Vieira goes out there and turns Raging Panda mode on, and unfortunately for her, Sijara Eubanks was ready for that. A lot of fighters in the past kind of wilted and were too intimidated by Julia Avila just coming forward with such hard strikes. Sijara Eubanks stood her ground and she traded, and her chin held up, and it really played in her favor. In that second round, though, when Avila turned on Raging Panda mode, she threw probably one of the most laziest front kicks I've ever seen, which allowed Sijara Eubanks to capitalize on that and then ride out the top position for the entirety of that round. She got close to finishing it via arm triangle a couple times, but Avila persevered. And then in that third round as well, Sijara Eubanks did a good job of getting that fight back to the ground, where she had a clear advantage in terms of keeping top position. Here, though, I think she has a little bit more issues on her hand. Ketlen Vieira, even though she got knocked out last time around by Irene Aldana, she was doing a pretty good job in that fight, and she has done a good job in the majority of her fights whenever she's in the striking realm. She's a consistent power puncher. She throws in combinations. She moves well. She doesn't have a Raging Panda mode where she just, blitzes forward and tries to knock out her opponent, but she has efficient striking. And I think that's going to be the difference maker here. And I think it's going to be a little bit harder for Sijara Eubanks to get Ketlen Vieira down than it was for her to get Julia Avila down. As long as Ketlen Vieira doesn't go out there and throw lazy kicks or anything that Sijara can grab and take her down, I think it's going to be pretty easy for Ketlen to keep this on the feet. I'm not saying Sijara Eubanks will be completely washed out if this fight does stay on the feet, because she does have some pretty good output and a solid variety of strikes when she is on the feet. So, she does have a little bit there, but I think she will slowly start to get discouraged, and we'll see her gas tank issues start to showcase themselves once more now that she's going to have an opponent that actually has a little bit of resistance and is not just lying on her back. I think the one mistake that a lot of people are making out there regarding Sijara Eubanks is thinking that her gas tank has gotten significantly better, but in my opinion, it all depends on what the opposition is bringing to her to justify her gas tank. So I think Ketlen Vieira could absolutely make her work for 3 rounds, and that's where we're going to start to see the gas tank issues of Sijara Eubanks start to showcase themselves once again. Ketlen Vieira, she throws a lot in her punches, and what I actually wanted to see, the prop that I did not get to take a look at before actually starting this, was what Vieira in round 3 is, and that's plus 2,100. Not a bad spot. Yeah, I mean, especially me being a non-believer in Eubanks' gas tank still. My only concern here with Ketlen Vieira is this is the first time she's coming off a knockout loss like this in the UFC, and we don't know what kind of fighter we're really going to get. We're coming up on close to over 9 months now, close to 10 months since Ketlen Vieira last fought and when she got knocked out by Aldana. But she's dealt with a significant layoff before due to injuries in the past. Now here she is coming off her first knockout loss against a beatable opponent. She does. It makes sense why she's a minus 185 favorite. However, I still think that line's a little bit too wide given the X factors going into this fight. I do like Ketlen, though. I still think she goes out there and wins. I just find it hard to go out there and actually bet her at that number. I'd probably throw her in a Hail Mary or a lottery parlay or something like that, but I think she can go out there, be efficient with her striking, keep Sijara on the feet, and she might give up that first round just due to output. But after that, I think we're going to see Ketlen striking really start to catch up to Eubanks and really start to demoralize her, and that's where we start to see Vieira start to pull away. I think third round finish for Vieira is very, very likely here. Not very likely, but very live here, especially at that plus 2,100 odds. So that might be something that I take a little bit of a sprinkle on. But yeah, I think her pressure, the power behind her strikes, her composure as well too. Again, not having that Raging Panda mode that Julia Avila had, where Sijara Eubanks was just down to go in there and just go strike for strike at that point. I feel like Ketlen being a little bit more efficient and a little bit more methodical with her striking will pay dividends here. So my only concern with Sijara here is the potential for her to steal 2 rounds off of output alone, but I think we're going to see her output start to wane around the 6 minute mark, 7 minute mark, and that's where Ketlen's going to start to take over. Again, though, minus 185, a little bit too wide for my liking. It feels closer to like minus 140, minus 150. I'd be a little bit more on the Ketlen Vieira side, but we'll see. There's still less than 24 hours before the event starts, so we'll see if Ketlen's actually gonna, if money starts to come in on Eubanks. I'm seeing a lot of people high on Eubanks here, and I think a lot of people are liking the fact that she's getting such a quick turnaround, especially after such a dominant victory over a highly touted prospect in Julia Avila last time around. But I think Ketlen Vieira is the real deal. As long as her chin is still in check and she's okay, and she's not chinny, I still just think it was a one and done kind of thing for her. Also, I don't think that Sijara Eubanks can generate the power to really put Vieira out. And one more thing to note here. Let's not forget that Sijara Eubanks was a flyweight before. This is, she's had a couple fights now at 135 pounds, and I believe that Ketlen Vieira is one of the bigger, more stronger 135ers out there too. So I feel like it's going to be a little bit harder for Sijara to like spam takedowns, or even, again, it's going to take Vieira a big slip up to really get herself on the ground. And again, I think she'll put up a little bit more of a fight than we saw Julia Avila did, especially off of her back. She's a pretty good jiu-jitsu artist herself. I would give the slight advantage in jiu-jitsu to Eubanks, but I feel like even if this fight does hit the ground and Vieira is the one on top, I think she'll be safe and she'll be able to do enough damage to actually accrue some points and some top control there. But I do think it comes down to a third round finish here for Ketlen Vieira, and I believe that's what we'll get. So I'm going to take Ketlen Vieira to win this fight via TKO in the third round after we see Sijara Eubanks start to suck a little bit of wind. Kai Kara France versus Brandon Royval. We got minus 235 on KKF and plus 195 on Brandon Royval. Fun fight. I truly think that this fight is a sleeper for fight of the night. I truly believe that both guys are going to bring it, but I truly think that it's actually the Brandon Royval side that's a little bit more more of the ingredient to make this fight as fun as it's going to be. Going through tape for this guy, I quickly realized he's kind of like a mini Tony Ferguson. I call him mini T Ferg because he fights pretty much the same way as Ferguson. Forward pressure, throws a lot of punches, maybe not technically the most the greatest strikes or the greatest technique or anything like that, but he's landing and he's moving forward and he's pressuring his opponents. And then whenever he gets into grappling and jiu-jitsu exchanges, the guy holds his own. He's always active. You never see him really resting on his back if his opponents decide to take him down, or if he ever ends up in that position. The guy's always looking to work, looking to move, looking for submissions, looking for reversals, and I find that to be very, very positive when you're looking to bet a guy. His cardio seems on point too. We saw him go 5 rounds with Casey Kenny, and Kenny just a step above Royval, especially stronger too. Has the better wrestling there as well. But in this fight, I truly think that Royval has the much better grappling experience and grappling techniques here. Obviously, Kai Kara France has the advantage when it comes to striking and being more technical and probably having more power as well. But that's not always the case when it comes to like MMA matchups. You know what I mean? Brandon Moreno, perfect example in terms of a guy that technically isn't the better striker against Kai Kara France, but his pressure, his relentlessness, his ability to move forward and keep Kai Kara France, just on edge and not really being able to get comfortable. I think that really broke Kai Kara, and it just, allowed Brandon Moreno to get the victory there. As we saw that fight go on, we saw Moreno's confidence grow and it glimmered, and I truly think it broke Kai to see that, the showboating and the flexing that Brandon Moreno was doing. I really think that broke Kai. Now, I don't think that we're going to see Brandon Royval go out there and, outstrike Kai Kara France and start flexing on him or anything like that. But what I've seen from him in his striking department, doesn't make me believe he's going to go out there and absolutely get starched. I like his consistency when it comes to leg kicks. I think that's going to be a big part of his game here too. But I I like his ability to create chaos and ability to capitalize on that chaos. You know what I mean? It seems like he thrives in that chaos, just like Tony Ferguson, which is why I draw those comparisons. Technically, they may not be the best fighters, but they're like fighters. You know what I mean? And that's the difference between guys that just go out there and try to outpoint their opponents compared to guys that go out there and try to get the finish and try to be highlighting and entertaining while doing that as well. So, even seeing Royval's reaction to his win over Tim Elliott, he went out there and got a solid submission victory over Tim Elliott, yet he was still upset at himself. Like, he didn't even let himself celebrate. Yeah, he got the win, but like you saw in the post-fight interview, he was just pissed that he didn't make it look a little bit more impressive. And those small things are kind of what I like to look at for these fighters that just want to achieve perfection. Perfection is never going to be achieved, but to see that a guy is looking to go to that 100% mark, that perfection mark, is always something reassuring. A lot of people think that Royval needs to get this fight to the ground to really capitalize and get the victory here. And I kind of agree, but I think that, again, creating those situations where you got scrambles or when you got Kai clinched up against the cage, there's opportunities for, Royval to hop on his back. There's opportunities for him to get a trip or something like that. And Kai does have solid takedown defense, but we have seen him in situations where I feel like Royval is going to be able to capitalize. Take, for example, the Mark De La Rosa fight. That first round, De La Rosa really pushed him up against the cage, had some opportunities where he could take his back, but just, in my opinion, not as crafty as Brandon Royval. And yeah, De La Rosa is I'm not going to call him a high-level jiu-jitsu, but his background is jiu-jitsu, but I feel like Royval's, awkwardness and just ability to create scramble situations and just be wacky out there, I think it's going to throw Kai off. How Kai, in my opinion, does the best when he's the one moving forward and landing his bombs and landing his combinations and, breaking his opponents. But there's an argument that he could be 2-2 in the UFC. Actually, in his last 4 fights, he could be 2-2. That fight against Raulian Paiva, that was absolute hometown cooking. And I'm not saying that Royval is going to go out there and implement the same game plan as Paiva, but we got to pull back a little bit on this love that Kai Kara-France continues to get in every single fight. Tyson Am never throws anything. You know what I mean? So it's easy for him to go out there and fucking get a decision victory over him. We saw what happens when he gets pushed back and starts getting pushed to his limits, and the pace starts to get pushed against him. When he fought Brandon Moreno, and what happened? Came out on the losing end. Mark De La Rosa just seems to settle for like being a punching bag, you know what I mean? So not much resistance there. Raulian Paiva really put it on him. Elias Garcia, not really the greatest. And even like the stint between the Ultimate Fighter and when he came back to the UFC, Kai Kara-France was just beating up on some Asian guys that really didn't have too much high-level experience. So I think he has a slightly padded record and a lot of rub just because he's a city kickboxing guy. So I truly think that Royval is highly underrated in this spot. I can get him at plus 200 at one of my books, and I think I'm going to pull the trigger. I think he's a very live dog here. I think he can make it a very uncomfortable fight for Kai Kara-France. And as long as his chin holds up, because yeah, he will eat some shots here from Kai Kara-France. As long as he is able to walk through them and continue to push the pace and make Kai uncomfortable, this is a very winnable fight for Brandon Royval. So I'm going to take Royval to win this fight by submission. I'm going to say second or third round. He continues to push through the pace, continues to create these chaotic situations where, he hops on Kai Kara-France's back, or he just gets to these situations where he's able to implement his jiu-jitsu. But again, starts with the leg kick, starts with the unorthodox. Like there's one combination I saw him throw against, I want to say it was Joby Sanchez, where he's like body kick followed by a high kick, same side. Just these small, weird, unorthodox combinations and fighting styles that we see from Brandon Royval really throws guys off their game. So it doesn't matter if you're technically the better fighter or technically the better striker. There's guys like Tony Ferguson and Brandon Royval that can go out there and just make things dirty and make things weird and make things unorthodox, and that's where they thrive. So I like Royval here, especially at that plus 200 line. So I'm going to take him to win by second or third round submission. Co-main event time. We got the light heavyweight strap on the line here without John Jones and without Daniel Cormier. It's been a long time since a light heavyweight title fight has occurred without either of those two human beings. I believe UFC 128 is the event that John Jones captured the title at first over Shogun Rua, and UFC 120. Sorry, UFC 113 is when Shogun Rua. The poster behind me. UFC 113 when Shogun defeated Machida to capture the title, and then he defended against John Jones and lost it right there. So it's been a long time since we've seen this light heavyweight strap be defended or even fought for outside of John Jones and Daniel Cormier. So I'm very much looking forward to it. And it's with two solid guys that are looking to start to take over the light heavyweight division. But I think that we'll see the title switch hands a little bit more than we have seen over the past 10 years. This is solid. Dominick Reyes versus Jan Blachowicz. Reyes, a lot of people are thinking he's coming in as the champ anyway, since he had a very competitive fight against John Jones in a fight that a lot of people believe that he won as well. So there's a little heat coming in with him. But Jan Blachowicz has been around for a long time. The guy is very, very experienced. This is going to be his 35th fight, whereas Dominick Reyes, this is only going to be his 14th fight. So you're talking about close to just under a third of the amount of experience that Jan Blachowicz has. So let's start off with Dominick Reyes. They call him the Devastator because he has devastating knockout power and solid power behind his hands and his kicks too. Before he came to the UFC, he had a highlight reel knockout over Jordan Powell. Beautiful head kick knockout where the guy kind of just called for it and then he got it pretty much, and we saw Dominick Reyes take him out. And then coming into the UFC, Dominick Reyes was able to put together 6 solid victories, one questionable victory over Volkan Oezdemir, but then after that he goes out there, destroys Chris Weidman, gets a title shot, and pushes John Jones to the brink. But you gotta kind of blame yourself if you're Dominick Reyes in that fight, as it seemed like he took the foot off the gas, after that 2.5 round mark. After he won the first 2 rounds in a lot of people's eyes, and then the 3rd, 4th, and 5th round slowly gave it away to John Jones. Again, very close fight, could have gone either way. I believe I had it for Dominick Reyes. I scored that fight for Reyes, but still, very close fight. And this fight is coming in against Jan Blachowicz, who also has had 1 5-round fight. He was scheduled twice, I believe, for 5 rounds. Once against Jacare Souza, which he went the entire 5 rounds with, and then against Corey Anderson, where he just charged him in that first round. And Dominick Reyes, he's been scheduled 2 times now, the same amount, and he split it 1-1. Obviously, the first one where he finished Chris Weidman in the first round, and then the next one where he went to the decision with John Jones. Dominick Reyes, tall, lanky dude, 6'4", 77-inch reach, uses his range quite well, but there are some question marks around him. I feel like the more overall and complete fighter here is Jan Blachowicz, who's been through the ring or who's seen, the toughest of tough opponents, whereas Dominick Reyes, I feel like, what do we got? Jared Cannonier, solid, but he's a middleweight now. OSP, okay. Volkan Oezdemir, one of the top guys in the division, and then Chris Weidman. A victory over Chris Weidman, who's making his 205-pound debut, should not warrant a title shot, but here we are. He gets the title shot. But luckily for him, he put on a good enough performance against John Jones for a lot of people to be like, okay, he's for real. And I feel like the steam he had from that fight is really carrying him over into this fight, and it's carrying over into the odds too, which is why this line is as wide as it is. In my opinion, it should not be that wide. I feel like Jan Blachowicz, the longer that this fight goes, the more advantage that he has. We could, in the fight against Jacare Souza, we did see Jan Blachowicz get the later rounds. He was the one that got the judges' nod on the later rounds, and I feel like that's going to pay some dividends for him here in this fight that I do see going longer than 2.5 rounds. So if you guys want to hit that over a 2.5, I think that's a solid spot in this fight, but I could see both guys kind of grinding it out. I feel like Dominick Reyes is going to try to keep the distance, try to get his striking off, look for a knockout, but Jan Blachowicz is quite durable in my opinion, and I feel like he's going to try to push the pace try to get into Dominick Reyes' face, close the distance as much as possible to, nullify the amount of damage that's coming his way from Dominick Reyes. I like Jan Blachowicz in this spot, but for some reason I just can't pull the trigger. I'm not 100% sure why. I think this is a solid dog spot, and I feel like he has a better chance of capturing a title than Costa does in the main event. I like Blachowicz here. I feel like he can just mix it up a little bit better. He should be able to get it to make it a little bit dirtier. We did see Volkan Oezdemir have some success when he was able to push Dominick Reyes up against the cage, and I feel like Blachowicz should be able to have the same type of success. 6'4" Dominick Reyes, 6'2" Jan Blachowicz. But if you guys saw the stare down earlier today, it looked like, Blachowicz was a lot bigger than a lot of people were expecting. So I find that interesting, especially when we finally see them, matching up face to face here. Blachowicz, like I said, ton of experience. He's 37 years old. He will be 38 come February, and Dominick Reyes is 30 years old, and he'll be 31 come December. So in terms of age, I still feel like Jan Blachowicz is capable of, or he is still in his peak. 37 years old is not too old for a light heavyweight, in my opinion. Even though that Dominick Reyes might have the youth and the athleticism here, I feel like the overall chops and the overall game of Blachowicz will be able to shine through here. As long as he doesn't get knocked down in the first 2 rounds, I feel like Blachowicz can make this a grinding and dirty fight, and he can make it a lot closer than the odds suggest. With that said, I would stay away from Dominick Reyes here. I feel like it's a little bit of a trap, and a lot of people, again, they're just, I feel they're a little bit goo-goo over the whole, goo-goo or gaga, whatever the term is. You guys know what the fuck I'm talking about. Again, over his performance against Jon Jones. And again, I think the narrative out there is that Jon Jones is starting to decline, and I feel like we're starting to see the talent gap start to close at light heavyweight. And this is a good time for him to go back up to go up to heavyweight and let the younger guys start to take over that light heavyweight division. So, it was a combination of Dominick Reyes rising to the occasion of that fight with Jon Jones, as well as, I believe, the diminishing talents of Jon Jones as well, too. So I feel like, you can't count out the Polish power of Jan Blachowicz, because, one, I do believe he can still crack, even though his last victory was over a chinny Corey Anderson, who now finds himself in Bellator. I'm not sure if he'll go out there and put Dominick Reyes out, but I feel like he can make it as close of a fight to possibly steal this fight on the judges' scorecards. So, can't believe I'm saying it, but I'm actually going to go with Jan Blachowicz to win this fight by decision. I've already made 2 bets for this card. If I were to choose a third dog to put some money on, I would have to go with Blachowicz here. And I feel like he can just pull it out via decision. So, Jan Blachowicz via decision is probably a good bet here if you want to play anything here. I'd like to, realistically, I would like to see Dominick Reyes have made more improvements in his game. Maybe be a little bit more urgent in the 3rd, 4th, and 5th rounds, rather being so passive as he was in that the Jon Jones fight. But it could also be, a learning experience for him. It was a legit 5-rounder that he, for the first time he ever had to go through. And again, he's only been pro since 2014. We're talking about Jan Blachowicz, who's been a pro since 2007. He has 7 years of experience on him. And not to mention, Jon Jones captured the title in 2011, I believe it was. 2011, he captured the title. Jon Jones was champion for at least 3 years before Dominick Reyes even made his pro debut. So that's something that a lot of people need to recognize as well, is that Dominick Reyes, in my opinion, he's slowly still coming into his own. He may not even be at his peak. So this fight might, maybe the Jon Jones fight came a little bit too early, and he did show up to that. But there's still a lot of improvements that he needs to make. And in terms of improving, I feel like it's the sustainability of his damage over a 5-round fight compared to just, giving it all for the first 2.5 rounds and then slowly starting to drop off. Again, that Oezdemir fight was damn close, and I feel like Jan Blachowicz is definitely up there and can give him the same type of fight, if not worse. I'm going to take Blachowicz to win this fight via decision. Welcome to the Polish era. I'm not sure for how long, because I feel like there's contenders that are going to be coming up and chomping at the bit. Most notably, Glover Teixeira. Watch out for old man Glover coming out there probably at 40 years old trying to win a fucking title. But yeah, on this night, I believe it's going to be Mr. Poland, Jan Blachowicz, getting his hand raised via decision. Time for the main event. We got the middleweight strap on the line here, and it's not often that we get the lower weight class getting top billing over a higher weight. The ones that come to mind are both interim title fights back at, I believe, is UFC 236. It was actually when Adesanya fought Kelvin Gastelum. Yeah, UFC 236, when Israel Adesanya fought Kelvin Gastelum. That was a middleweight fight, yet we had the interim lightweight title on the line as well with Dustin Poirier and Max Holloway. But now it's Israel Adesanya getting top billing over a higher weight class in the light heavyweight title fight that I just spoke about earlier. But Adesanya going up against Paulo Costa, there's a lot of heat around this fight. There's a lot of anticipation for this fight. I'm fucking stoked that we're getting this fight. I believe it's the right fight to make in this division. Paulo Costa has looked really, really good coming into this fight. Obviously the Yoel Romero fight has a little bit of asterisks and some question marks around it. Most notably that second round. A lot of people, had it 50-50. If you look on MMA decisions, 53% of people had round 2 for Paulo Costa, round 1 obviously for Paulo Costa, round 3 for Yoel Romero. So very close fight. Regardless, Yoel Romero was the first one to actually get the crack at Israel Adesanya, give us an absolute snooze fest after we got a war between Ioane and Jacek and Weili Zhang right before that. But now it's Paulo Costa's turn. It's the Eraser's turn. It's the first time we're getting two undefeated fighters fighting for a championship since, I believe it was UFC 98. I might be off on the actual number pay-per-view, but since Rashad Evans versus Lyoto Machida, and we all know the challenger Lyoto Machida ended up coming out victorious and capturing the light heavyweight strap. But here it is with Israel Adesanya coming in as a minus 175 favorite. This line has gone, it's been a little bit of a roller coaster. It's gone up and down. It opened at minus 150-ish, minus 135, and now we got money coming in on Adesanya. So it's kind of basic almost to break this fight down. Like, we know what Paulo Costa's forte is. We know what his MO is. He wants to go in there and take your head off. In terms of technically how he fights, it seems that he builds most of his game around a body kick. That's where he tries to measure his range, tries to see where his opponent is in comparison to where he's at and how much distance he needs to cover to land that bomb. It's not often that you see him throwing combinations, but one thing that we did see in terms of an improvement since, between his Romero fight and his Hall fight, and even dating back to his Johnny Hendricks fight, in those first two fights, he was looking for the bomb pretty much every single time. In the third fight, we did see him throw in a little bit more combinations, but I believe that's because we saw Yoel Romero willing to engage in these firefights with him. So that's where I think we saw Paulo Costa really start to pull out the combinations and start to throw with a lot more conviction. Like I said, in the Hendricks and the Hall fight, he was just stalking those guys. He was throwing the body kick out there to gauge the distance, and then he was going to come in there with the overhand right and try to bomb and finish on these guys. It's really when he has his opponents, behind that warning track up against the cage that he really starts to unload his damage, and I think it's going to be a little bit harder for him to do that against a very elusive and a mobile Israel Adesanya. I feel like his best bet here is to win inside that first round. If he's not able to get that, I think that he's just going to be winging at so much air that he's going to start to suck wind after that 1.5 round mark, and that's where we see Adesanya start to display his brilliance. I feel like Costa would slow down roughly around that 2.5 round mark for sure, and that's where Adesanya starts to pull away and really starts to make Costa look like a dummy, or an amateur, I should say. I don't know what approach that we'll really see Costa come out in. Is he going to be a little bit more cautious? Is he going to be, more aware of the fact that he has 25 minutes to work with compared to just 15 minutes? Is he going to want to go out there and just absolutely annihilate and finish Israel Adesanya in that first round? I'm not sure. It's tough to tell, but given what we've seen from him in the past, it's just a stalking approach that he has. But this is the first opponent that he's truly fighting that's as elusive and as technical on the feet, and as methodical as Israel Adesanya is on the feet and in the striking realm. So it'd be interesting to see how he approaches this in terms of, is he going to stalk him? Is he going to try to wait for Adesanya to be the first one? But I highly doubt that. I highly doubt we see Adesanya being the one that's pulling the trigger first. And unfortunately, if Paulo Costa goes that route and waits for Adesanya, we're going to get another Romero and Adesanya fight. These guys are just mainly going to be staring at each other the entire time. And the thing was with Adesanya, that's what his game is predicated on. It's mainly the counter strikes that he waits. He waits for his opponents to throw. He waits for them to overextend, and then he comes back with a beautiful counter of his own. I find it hard to believe that Costa is going to be waiting for Adesanya to go. Costa's not a counter striker. He's the one that likes to crash forward. He's the one that likes to put the beating on his opponents, and I feel like it's going to be the same here. The one thing that I really took from the Uriah Hall fight was the beautiful jab of Uriah Hall, and Uriah Hall used it even just as beautifully in his last fight against Antonio Carlos Jr. It's just so fast like a piston, and it was clearly giving Paulo Costa problems. It seemed like he stepped away from it a little bit in that second round, which is when Paulo Costa was really able to stalk him some more, get him up against the cage, land a beautiful left hook to the face that really stunned and wobbled Uriah Hall, and then he followed up with the strikes to get him to the ground and finish it that way. Yes, we've seen Adesanya hit before by Kelvin Gastelum. We've seen him hit in the past. And if he gets hit by Costa, it might be night-night. But, we haven't really seen Costa go out there and one-punch KO these guys. It's an accumulation of strikes. Like, as hard as he hits and as much as of a intimidation factor as people have regarding this guy, I can't remember the last time we've seen him, like, flatline a dude. You know what I mean? Let me go back to his record. Maybe there's a fight that I skipped or I don't remember. Bamboche, I don't really believe he was completely KO'd and out. Again, these guys, like, he's going out there and like landing a big enough shot to drop these guys and then overwhelm them with strikes. But like Adesanya does a pretty good job in terms of, like, even when he gets hit, he continues to move and get out of the way. What I found interesting is Paulo Costa bringing out the black belt during the weigh-in stare downs and even throwing a white belt over at Adesanya, which makes you kind of believe that he's probably going to go out there and try to go for a takedown or something like that. What I think is that he's just throwing it out there to make Adesanya think like, okay, this guy's probably going to want to go out there and show his jiu-jitsu. So maybe he's like, all right, I'm going to feint some takedowns, try to get Adesanya to bite on those takedowns. And then when he bites on those takedowns, I'm going to come over with a, whether it's an uppercut for, hoping that Adesanya is going to go into a sprawling motion or an overhand right or something like that. This fight is just so intriguing. What I truly believe the outcome is going to be, though, is we see Costa go out there, swing at air for that first 10 minutes or so. Adesanya just getting out of the way, getting his licks in every now and then. Hopefully he has an educated jab that he's able to throw out there and frustrate Costa. But then after that 2.5 round mark, we see Adesanya really start to take over and really get Costa to pay, because we'll see Costa really start to slow down. We'll see, his punches not come as quickly, not come as often either. And that's where I think we'll see Adesanya really start to take over. And I kind of like the Adesanya round 3 or round 4 prop. We got plus 1050 on round 4 for Adesanya. And I kind of like that. I think that's where we'll see him really start to open up, try to, maybe have a little bit more disregard for the power coming back his way from Costa. And we'll see him start to throw 3, 4, 5 punch combinations and, not even punch, but punches and kicks and knees and all that stuff. That's when we'll see Adesanya's game really open up. I'm also seeing a lot of people out there saying that Costa is in Adesanya's head. I don't read too much into that shit. You know what I mean? I feel like Adesanya has his emotions in check pretty well. You know what I mean? To be as technical of a striker as him, to have gone through that devastating knockout that he had against, I believe, I want to say Mario Pereira or Alex Pereira. I can't remember the guy's first name, but something Pereira. He got lights out KO'd in Muay Thai one time. But since then, he's been pretty much untouchable, at least in MMA. He's going out there and finishing these guys and having, spectacular performances outside of the Yoel Romero fight. But I find it hard to believe that we'll get a boring fight here against Paulo Costa. But I think it's going to be Adesanya that ends up reigning supreme after, again, he needs to duck and dodge that first 2 rounds, which I believe he is educated enough to do. And then we'll see Paulo Costa start to slow down. I was really looking forward to getting into taping and really getting into this fight, but it's hard to really tell what kind of Costa we're going to get because this is the first legit opponent for Costa in terms of a guy that moves well, is as educated in the striking realm, and just isn't willing to get stalked. Pretty much, Hendricks and what's the other guy? Fucking Hendricks and Hall were content with getting stalked. I don't think Adesanya will get stalked that way. I think he'll move well, pivot well, cut angles well, and then get his licks in and then get out. And then I don't think that we'll see Adesanya trade as much as Yoel did in the pocket. So I don't think that we'll see Costa throwing as many combinations as we saw him throw in that Yoel Romero fight. So again, I think it's going to be Costa swinging at air for that first 10 minutes or so. I'm not going to lie, though. I did throw Paulo Costa round 1 into just a completely degenerate prop parlay just because plus 600 is a little bit crazy in my opinion. But I think that's truly his window of opportunity is that first round. If he's able to land clean enough on Adesanya when he's freshest and most powerful, that's probably going to be a spot. Otherwise, if we see the over 2.5 round mark here, I think it's going to get really questionable for Acosta, and we'll see Adesanya really start to open up in the later rounds. Like I said, I think it's going to be round 4 that we see Adesanya land like a beautiful head kick of some sort, ground Costa and overwhelm him with strikes and get the finish that way. So final prediction: Israel Adesanya to win this fight by 4th round TKO. I'm hoping it's a banger of a fight. I'm not saying Adesanya owes it to us after that snoozer against Romero, but I find it hard to believe that Costa's going to be in a boring fight against Adesanya, especially considering the bad blood that they have here. So once again, Israel Adesanya to win this fight via 4th round TKO. And that's the breakdowns. God damn. Once again, I apologize for the tardiness of the podcast. I had a lot of big things I was working on throughout the week, but here it is. Glad to have gotten out, even if it's less than 24 hours till the fucking the fights come out or the fights start. But I appreciate everybody reaching out to me and asking when the podcast is going to come out. This will be the latest you'll ever fucking see it. I'm gonna get cracking either on fight day or the day after on the next card. So I'm hoping to have at least a Tuesday or Wednesday release for the next episode. Appreciate you guys as always. Hit up the Patreon again, hopefully to get earlier access to these breakdowns. And then also hit the join button below if you don't want to join the Patreon. It's slightly cheaper to join the YouTube membership to get the early access to these breakdowns as well as no ads on any of my on my podcasts, on my videos. All right. I'll see you guys next week. Good luck on your bets. And I'm going to go get some fucking sleep.